Hi, this is Stacy from The Advisor, and today I'm very excited because we have two very special guests today. They are wonderful. They are the owners of Carmen's Little Leaders, and they are also on our podcast channel. They have their own podcast, and they talk about parenting. They talk about a lot of important issues on how to parent your child, different ways to improve your family life, and different ways to improve your life with your child and make your child be the best they could possibly be. Now, today, they're going to talk about, it's a great topic. I love it. It's about, do we praise our children for purpose, or do we praise our children for effort? And I think it's a great topic because it's something that's not talked about. And it's also, do we praise our children for purpose, or do we praise our children for the effort? So today we're going to find out. They have a lot of great information to share, and they're going to share it with us today. I'm very excited. And before we go, I just want to give a quick shout out to our sponsors, and it's the Happy Wellness Expo in Livingston, New Jersey. They're going to be doing a huge expo. It's people are coming nationwide, and it's going to be all about natural products. They'll have doctors, coaches there, people from all over. They'll have exhibitors, and they'll have also people coming to see the expo. So it'll be in the description box. So look at it, give it a visit them, and give them a call if you're interested in participating as an exhibitor. So I'm so excited to have both of you here. You guys are great. I love you both. Tell people, in case they haven't seen your previous podcast, tell them a little about each of yourselves and what you do, and about Carmen's Little Leaders, and then we'll get into the topic.
Thank you, Stacy. Yeah, my name is Audra Karam, and my background has been in working with children. We have 4 children of our own, and I have loved working with children and being a part of their growth. And so we did the martial arts, and we've been in businesses together for the years. But yeah, we are so passionate about our most recent mission, which is, helping kids become leaders, helping good kids become great kids. And so that's a little bit about me.
Well, Stacy, thank you. We love your show, and thank you so much for allowing us to join you. We think what you do is incredible. So my name is Matthew Karam, and we have, Audra and I are on a similar mission of really helping these children be the best they can be in their lifetime. And so our program that we do offer is in character and leadership development for pre-K through 9 years old. And so those kids are the ones that we're looking at as our next generational leaders, and how can we support them to be the best they can be. And so that's our mission, and that's our goal. And so it really challenges some of the things that we were brought up with and raised
Right.
with,
Mm-hmm.
and the ways we see things happening now. So that's a big issue.
And I think a thing that's really important for both of us that we've learned through the years is it's traditional values, getting back to those traditional things that we all know are important, to help our children be successful.
Sure. That's important. And it does take a village. It takes a lot of folks to work, together to get these children raised to be happy, healthy, strong, independent members of society that do contribute and add value. And so, and
as you mentioned, our topic today, what we'd like to kind of just bring up to discuss a little bit more is, when we praise our kids, when we say good things to them, it's interesting to know what we say and how we say it is so powerful, because we've learned that when we praise on their performance, it can kind of backfire on us, as opposed to praising another way. So we want to talk about that a little bit.
So one of the things we wanted to share today is we read an article that was published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology back in 1998. And the heading of the article says, "Praise for intelligence can undermine children's motivation and performance."
Whoa. Yeah.
I was like, wow, we better read this. It's kind of shocking. And so when you read, they conducted 6 different independent studies. And one of the things that they really brought home was 85% of the parents and actually raised their children by rewarding their performance. Okay. And so meaning maybe when we were younger, let's say, so to speak, if I'm playing basketball and I'm on the team If we win, then we get pizza type of a thing, right?
Yeah.
And so that was something that was just kind of a given. And we never really thought about it. And, and when we look back, it seems like we parented our children one way, so to speak, and we parented the children in our martial arts school a little differently, believe it
Yeah.
or not. And no one really ever, I want to say called me out on it, but you know what I mean? I never identified the difference.
Yeah, I don't, in all fairness, I don't think it was a known consideration, because
Right.
whenever we do praise as parents, right, we do it out of the goodness of our hearts. There is no
Right.
maliciousness, there is no agenda. And we do a lot of what we heard was maybe offered to us, great work, well done, way to go, super, excellent, but go ahead.
Well, when I was being raised, I really didn't get much praise at all, truthfully, personally, from my parents, right?
Yeah.
The only thing I heard was, you didn't do that right, or this was wrong, right? And
Very
so,
true.
yeah, there wasn't much praise being spread around at
Yeah,
all,
right.
truthfully,
It was just an expectation.
Yes,
And
that it was.
Expectation. True.
yeah, and like you had said, we all just kind of put that expectation on ourselves. I need to do better, and you can always improve, right? And I don't know that this generation is feeling that way.
Even
Right.
when I went to college, I remember my father, he was from Greece. He had this big, deep Greek accent, and I was the only child. So he said to me, I pay for your college. And he goes, but you screw up and that's it. And then he went like this with his hands. And I was like, okay. And
Yes.
I left off for college,
Yeah.
And you knew he meant
He
it.
meant it. Yes.
Right?
Message received, right?
Yeah, there was no gray area.
Yeah.
He was very clear on
Yeah.
what his position. And I think that's awesome, one of the things that shocked me in reading this article was, it seems like in both groups, whether you were rewarding for performance or effort, when there was a good outcome, the results were okay. There really wasn't a big difference, okay?
Right.
If you did effort or performance, they turned out well because the outcome turned out well. What they learned in the study that made a tremendous difference was when the performance was under or poor, wasn't what they expected or what they wanted to have happen. And so when you say to a child, hey, if you get all A's on this report card, then we're going to whatever, right? I'd like to give you kind of an example of when I was a child. I was in third grade, and I remember this to a T. I was in a parochial school. And so my dad traveled a lot at that time. And so he put a note by my bedstand that said, because he was already gone by the time I woke up, it said, if you get all A's on your next report card, you get $1. Okay. And I was so excited. I was a
Yeah.
good student generally. And,
Right.
that it motivated me. And so it was kind of funny though, but so the next report card comes around. Of course, dad's not there, but I get all A's. I run home to mom. I'm so excited. And mom's like, well, you're gonna have to take that up with your dad. I don't do that. And he's not here. You have to wait 2 days till he comes home. And so I did. And the long and short, I show it to him, and I never forgot it. He says, I don't remember doing that.
Oh my goodness.
Letter. And I'm like, what do you mean?
So here's the life lessons. So keep going. Sorry.
Yeah. So I was, kind of devastated by that, and I'm like, wait a minute, I did all this work and I got nothing and all that. And then 2 weeks later because we had a small between grades, let's say kindergarten and sixth grade, there were only 100 students all in the whole school. Okay. And so they had a new teacher come in that could offer a new art class just because of her experience in her past. So they were asking kids, hey, do you want to do that? Well, believe it or not, I liked art, but I was horrible at it. Okay. If you saw me draw something, you wouldn't even know what it was. And, so I declined joining the art class because I knew if I didn't get all A's next time, that I couldn't get the dollar. So I didn't do it.
Ah.
And so it held me back in my fun in
Yeah.
my development,
Well, and just opportunity.
willing to try new
Yeah.
things, because if I didn't get all A's, I didn't get $1,
Right.
And so that made me reflect back, thinking about, okay, now I'm starting to see it did affect me some,
Right.
that I never even had thought of before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I knew, and so,
It explains now why you hold on to all the paper he gets in the home. So you can have proof.
it did. I subconsciously, then from then on, I mean, everything I have proof from 20 years ago. And my dad taught me that without even
Really,
doing
maybe
doing it
personally
on
doing it.
purpose,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that. And so, and we see today that the big push for parents is, how do we create resilience and
Right.
how do we create grit in our children, right?
Right.
Because yeah, I don't know if most of your listeners know this, but they find that the number one indicator of success for children is resilience and grit.
Mhm.
So if you're hoping for your child to be successful, you need to help them build that.
And how do you do that?
Yeah, and right. And so how do we do that? And it speaks to that. Like one of the mistakes, so to say, is that, we may be giving praise inappropriately, that's doing not more harm than good,
Right.
but we want to think about it. We want to make sure that we're cognizant of the words we say. And there's nothing wrong. I guess we all want to make sure there's nothing wrong with saying attaboy, great
Yeah.
work, job well done. But we just want to raise awareness to say, think about what you say and how you say it. So go ahead. I know Matt wants to
So,
share more on that.
yeah, so I guess the article that really got us to reflect on was, when there is a bad outcome, if you're rewarding for performance, what it leads the child to do is say, okay, I'm not as good as I thought I was.
Mhm.
Right.
I'm not as smart or as intelligent as I thought I was. And there's kids out there that are smarter than I am. And so what you find is those children start to be unwilling to try new things.
Right.
They won't take on those new missions, new thing, because they want to be the smartest, right?
Right.
And so they really start to limit what they do. And the sad part is, there may be things in their life that they really would enjoy,
Yeah.
like me taking an art class,
Yeah.
but they don't, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Comes down to that fear of failure.
It is.
Yeah, fear. That's one of the biggest things in a nation is fear of failure. That's why people don't move on, because they fear failure. And that is one of the main reasons people don't move forward in life.
Yeah, no, good point.
Exactly.
Yeah. And we learn to, when you're resilient, and you have to kind of stare that failure, that fear in the face, right?
Yeah.
And say, what's the worst that can happen?
Right.
Right.
And if we're not raising our children to think that way, then we're limiting them.
Right.
So, right. So when you have a child that you reward for effort,
Hmm.
and there is a bad outcome or an under expected outcome, so to speak,
Right.
that child learns, if I put more effort in, then I can accomplish that goal,
Right.
right?
Hmm.
I can make the mark. And even
Right.
though it didn't happen the first time, so that's where, if we want to develop resilience and grit in our children, if we reward for effort, now they understand it's okay to not make the mark the first time,
Yeah.
right? It's okay that I have to put more effort in.
Right.
And
Yeah.
when I do, then
And
I
yeah.
can get a good outcome.
Yeah. And then, they find that this encourages them to keep trying.
Right.
Yeah.
Motivation. It increases their motivation
Yeah.
tremendously, which is so important. And ultimately, it increases their performance.
Yeah.
Because no one, I mean, if we think about Albert Einstein, or any of these huge people that were inventors, when they were talking about the light bulb, everyone focuses on how many times he had to try. If he
Yeah.
tried the first one and it didn't work,
Right.
we wouldn't even have him today, but he
Exactly.
just kept saying, I'm that one step closer, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And it was funny. We just recently heard, and I think you might have even shared it, that he was actually afraid of the dark is the whole reason that the light bulb was invented,
Mhm.
which I did not know, and I think that's
I didn't
fascinating.
know that
But
either. Yeah.
yeah, you just keep on trying, and yeah, his wasn't like stare fear in the face, like getting up to publicly speak or something. Um,
Right.
but yeah, you just, okay, I screwed up, I messed up. What's the worst that can happen? Well, I'm gonna learn.
Yeah.
And so there's so much resilience built, and then that persistence when we encourage our children. So when we say words like, I love how you stuck with that, I
Yeah.
think is better than, oh, it looks great. I love how you stuck with it when it got tough for you. And if we
Right.
start using that language, I think we can help our kids know that we're not going to get it perfect every time.
Yeah.
So that's a piece that I think is important to pick up. If I were a young parent, that would be something I would want to change in how I gave that praise or recognize my children.
Right. We knew, just like in our martial arts school, that if we taught a new skill, let's say as an example, maybe how to break a board,
Right.
uh, we expected those children not to be able to do it the first time.
Yeah.
It took practice,
Oh, yeah.
And so in our martial arts school, we did a tremendous job of focusing on the effort they were putting forward.
Right.
And you could see if they had practiced or not, right?
Oh, yeah.
And they were working on it.
Right.
That support and that uplifting of them, the only time we had trouble in that environment is if mom or dad didn't support the effort.
Yeah.
Okay. Sometimes dad, would be, you gotta, and that type of a thing. And, I had one dad that was giving their daughter a hard time.
Yeah.
And I said, Dad, let's have you come out and try it. He tried it and he couldn't break it. Okay. So that really changed his attitude.
That was a great idea.
For his daughter, and because I kept telling him it's really hard. It's going to take her time. It's
Mhm.
an expected 3-month goal. It's
Yeah.
not the next day.
Right.
And, but he wouldn't drop it. He wouldn't support her. And,
Yeah, and, not we didn't do this to embarrass him or anything, but the child was just really struggling. Her confidence was feeling less and less because dad wasn't believing in her. You know what I mean?
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
And so we saw that being, a conflict of interest in us trying to help raise her up. And
Yeah.
so yeah, he was a great sport about it, and kind of laughed it off. But I think it was a great learning lesson for him.
for
Oh,
their
yeah.
household.
Yeah.
Yeah, for their household, it really changed how dad interacted with her. And then he started supporting her effort,
Right.
which they saw tremendous improvement, not only in her grades,
Yeah.
but what she was willing to do.
Right.
She liked to swim, but she wasn't the best. And when they
Mhm.
would go places, she wouldn't swim.
Yeah.
After that, she started, okay, let's go swimming. And was she a
Yeah.
great swimmer? No, but
Right.
she had fun.
Yeah,
Yeah.
opens up opportunities. And we're not sitting here saying because that this is how we did it, because we made the mistakes as well.
I
Oh,
did
yeah.
as
We
dad.
all do as
And
parents.
I did.
right,
Yes.
there's plenty of them, and so we say learn from this and take
Yeah.
hold of this, because it's available. But yeah, and then as we mentioned earlier in our conversation, Matt nor I were really praised, and no reflection on our parents because we thought they all did a great job. But
Yeah.
it was just, do this, you're expected, and we found a way to do it, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's been a shift in all of that, and I think it's just interesting to know because we want to help these kids be successful.
We see that these kids are struggling.
Mhm.
They don't have that self-confidence that
Yeah.
our generation, I think, had,
Right.
right?
Oh, for sure.
If you give them a challenge, so many of them just collapse.
Yeah.
They fall apart.
Right.
Yeah.
I
And
think
why?
I'll tell you why, because I noticed from watching my family members and friends who have younger children, this generation hovers over their children. They're very overprotective. They do
Ah,
everything for their children. And there is no, I see a lack of discipline in many of the families that I have viewed. And I feel like one, if you can't you have to be in the background. Like when you have when you have a child, think of it as laying an egg, the bird comes out, and then you take care of the bird as they're a baby, and then you'll start to see them they will teach the bird everything it needs to know, and then they will let the bird fly.
Yes.
And when it comes to, I'll give you an example. Like when I had to do things, there was plenty of times growing up where I fell. Now, my father would not run and pick me up right away. He would let me fall, and I
Yes.
would have to get myself up. But if I couldn't get myself up, then he jumped
Yes.
in and helped me.
Yeah.
But
Wow.
he gave me the opportunity
To
to
fall.
do it on my own and made it look like like he wasn't going to help me. And then if I couldn't do it, he was right there for me.
Yes.
But I had to get myself up first.
Yes.
Now, I see in this generation, they are hovering over their children. They are so overprotective. They don't let their children go places and do things, and they're paranoid about a lot of different things. So these children, they live in an environment where mom and dad are doing everything for them. Well, how are they going to learn?
Mhm.
How are these children going to learn if you're doing everything for them? And if you're not giving these children discipline, how are they going to know how to behave? I
Right.
went to a restaurant with friends and their children were jumping all over the tables and grabbing forks and spoons. And I
Oh,
looked at one of the moms, and the mom didn't do anything. I
oh,
went over
oh my
and I
God.
said, "You cannot do this. We're in a restaurant." I said,
Right.
"Do not touch the forks. Do not touch anything on the table. These are not your tables. And you cannot, if you're not going to sit down, you can't touch any of the utensils. Can you
Yeah.
please stand with us?"
Hmm.
And
Oh, wow.
the child came back, but
Yeah.
it's not my duty, but I couldn't take it anymore. I was
I
like,
Right.
understand.
because I wasn't
Sure.
part of that group, and I was like, I have to admit, I got a little embarrassed, but it
Right.
wasn't my child, so
Hmm.
you really, when it's not your child, you really, there's a fine line of what you can do and what you can
Yes.
say. So,
Sure.
but I got
Yep.
to the point when I kept watching, I was like, oh my goodness, but this is why, you have to teach your child right and wrong, and you have to give your child consequences. It doesn't mean you have to be terrible consequences, but little consequences. Maybe they
Right.
like a certain video game. Well, for tomorrow, and the next day, because you did X and Y, you're not going to be able to use it. And then you give it back to them. So they
Right.
know in their head, oh God, if I do that again, or if I do something bad, mom and dad are going to take my video game away for 1 or 2 days.
Right.
And it's little things like that that kinda, like, mold a child, and then and I think that was the difference, and, I don't think you should go to the extreme when you're disciplining your children as they grow up, just little things. Little things can
Right.
make a big difference. But it's
I
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think a good point because a lot of parents are afraid to parent anymore, which is, discipline. But, I think an helpful thing that might be good for some of your listeners is to understand, like, if you want to avoid that situation, like if, because parents will come out and say, I'm so embarrassed of how they behave. Why do our kids act like this? And I remember when our children were young, and I think you have to set the expectation. I know before we
Yes.
ever went into a store, like I said, we've had 4 little ones and 5 and under.
Mhm.
But you set the expectation. So as we're all, before everybody gets unbuckled in the car, okay, now, and we're parking. Now remember, we're going in the store. When we get out, you stand on the line, hands on the cart, and just, and it's not militant. It's just,
No.
it's a game plan for your team, right?
Yes. Yes.
We're a team and we need a plan. And so I
Exactly.
think I think when we would elevate that expectation to help our children know, to help them be successful, we set them up for success, right? If I didn't have that conversation before we went in, then I leave it to them to make that decision is what my mistake would have been. And I knew that was too risky because I didn't know how it would come out. But I think to help parents now who may be listening and are struggling with like, okay, that's all well and good, Stacy. I want my child not to do that. Well, before we go into the restaurant, we might want to say, stay right by mom and dad, or make sure you stand in line when we're in line. And kids figure that out.
Oh, kids are smart.
And they model your behavior too, but
Oh, yeah.
you have to keep them in tow. You have to keep them beside you. And when their natural tendency is to be curious. Their natural, they want to learn about the world. But if we don't kind of help them figure out how to do that, in a socially acceptable way, then it backfires, and we have to be really aware of that, I think.
The hard part, I think, too, Stacy, about the story you shared is that mom clearly was disengaged.
Yeah.
It's her job as a parent
Right.
to help guide her children on how to act,
Yes.
what's acceptable in public.
Hmm.
It
And
doesn't just happen. These kids don't just figure it out.
no, you have to teach them,
You know?
right?
Yeah.
Any skill we want to learn, you have to teach them.
You have to
And,
teach them. Yes.
and let's say my dad might have had a strong hand when I was getting raised, but I
Mhm.
knew he loved me,
Right.
right? And he taught me manners and he taught me to be respectful of people. And
Yes.
he showed you, you have to do these things, right?
Yes.
And that was the value of being taught by your parents
Yeah.
the right way,
Mhm.
And I remember my mom and dad, I'm the oldest of 6 children. And I remember my mom and dad would give compliments to other parents, would tell them your children are well behaved and
Right.
those kind of things. I would hear those things as being the oldest. And truthfully, I never thought about it when I was a child. But I can tell you when I thought about it when I was a parent,
Right.
I wanted those same compliments for my children.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
yeah, I did not know the difference between rewarding for performance and rewarding for effort.
Yeah.
It didn't exist back then.
Right.
And I have to say, I made those same mistakes.
Yeah.
If my kids played in a football game and they won, I bought them pizza.
Right.
I did those things. But one of our children did have to work very hard academically. They struggled with school.
Right.
And that child, I did remember actually praising their effort because I knew we would spend 2 hours a night
Yeah.
at the kitchen table. There were tears. I mean, it was
Yeah.
hard. And,
But yeah, I think in you investing the time or us investing the time, let them know. But yeah,
yeah,
and those are the kids who really sometimes excel more than others is because they've been knocked down a few times and they know it's not easy.
Yeah.
And then they say, well, if I want to be a part of this, I better step up my game, and they dig deeper and find it.
and
So I
our
think that's
child now that we worked with that was younger like that, they are tough now,
Yeah.
determined, very
determined.
determined.
When they
Yeah.
put their mind to something, boy, oh boy, they
Mhm. Yeah.
they understand it's going to take effort. They
Right.
realize that it's okay not to do it right the first time.
Yeah, and I think another component that I want to make sure we don't gloss over is the fact when we are praising for the effort component, it really strengthens the relationship between that parent and that child because the child is hearing that you're paying attention.
Yes.
It's not just a flippant way to go, good job.
Right.
They know you're invested and you saw what they did and you're having that quick conversation about it, so to speak, as a conversation, but you're sharing a deeper essence of what they did, and they feel that, they get that.
I guess one of the things I saw too was there's so many parents, let's say, are divorced.
Hmm.
And, it seems like sometimes when they're divorced, the parents feel so bad themselves about what's
Yeah.
happened
Mhm.
that they don't parent
Yeah.
and they're not building that resilience and grit in their children
Right.
because they have them for a limited time.
Right.
They don't want to upset them. And sometimes they want to be more of their friend
Yeah.
than their parent.
Yes. I see that
Well,
too.
yeah, and you're worried about your time. Yeah, I didn't even bring that into the equation, but yeah, if you're coming from where mom lives here, dad lives there, and they're struggling or whatever it might be, as a parent, you want that relationship with your child, and
Yeah.
then to know you don't have them for 3 days, you're gonna probably be a little more overindulgent.
Right.
And to the child's detriment,
It is.
unfortunately,
It truly, right? We have to support these children so that they develop their internal self-confidence, so
Right.
they can figure out problem solve on their own,
Yeah.
Right.
right? And they can fall and whether parent picks them up or not, I think the example you gave, Stacy, with your dad is incredible right? He let you live. He let you experiment. But if you needed help, he was there, you
Right.
know.
Mhm.
But that was incredible. You have to let the children fall. Let them
Mhm.
try and reward the effort of trying. In there's one, okay, so in corporate America, if you start a division
Mhm.
and it fails, almost every company cuts off the whole division,
Right.
right? The kit and caboodle. There's one, Microsoft, Bill Gates, that if you start a division and it fails, he actually pays you a bonus.
Oh, really?
Instead of getting rid of you, he pays you. And
Yeah.
so it's
Incentivizes you to
because you
make mistakes. Yeah,
tried,
we've heard that before.
you
Yeah.
stepped out on a limb, you took the risk,
Mhm.
Like
it
that.
didn't pay out, but he rewards your effort for trying, right? And
Yeah.
that's the same here. He rewards the effort. You
Mhm.
gave it a try. And that's what we need to do better as parents is support them trying new things.
Yes.
It's okay that they didn't make it. And
Exactly.
Yeah, if we can back up to the whole divorce thing and you were talking about when you have your child, it's interesting because when live in the same house, as we know, opposites attract, right? So
Right.
Matt certainly he parented differently than I did. And so
Yeah.
it's when you're together, it's nice to have that, that little give and pull. And then, but when they're separated and the child is just with dad all weekend or vice versa, or whatever that dynamic is, um, now they're just getting poured in with one style of parenting, which we
Yeah.
know it's good to have a little of both, right?
Right.
Because it balances things a little bit. And I think that's a great thing to think about. Like, and it's
yeah,
tough to
it's
be on the
hard.
same page sometimes, but I know parents struggle with that too.
Sure. Yeah. And they're going to work you, right? The children know, hey, if I want this, I better ask mom. Or if I want
Right.
to do this, I better ask dad.
Yeah.
And that only gets worse in a divorce situation,
Yeah,
you know?
but even in a regular situations, children are smart. They know how to manipulate. There are plenty of times when my kids were growing up, they knew that I would say yes to something or I would say no to something, but dad might give in on certain things. And
Yeah.
instead of asking me, they would go to their dad and ask him first for certain things, depending on what they were asking. So kids are smart, and
Did it work?
so
Did it
you have
work
to
for them?
what?
Did it work for them when they did that?
Until I found out, and then I would get on dad's case about it. Yeah.
Right.
I,
See,
yeah,
go ahead.
I was
Yeah.
gonna say you have to have, when you're a married couple, you really have to have good communication. It's key
Mhm.
in order to be on the same page and to explain why you think it should not be a certain way and why he thinks it should be, and come to some
Right.
type of happy medium where you both are satisfied with the way you're gonna discipline or the way you're gonna raise your child, but you're at an area where you're both satisfied with the
Yes.
reaction, and then you make it very clear to the child, and then you explain to them, this is the way it's going to be, this is why it's going to be like that. Don't try to ask your mom or your dad for this and expect the other one to do this, because it's not going to happen anymore.
Right.
This is what's
Yeah.
going to happen.
I made it with my kids. I just made it real easy. I would say, what did mom say? I never said yes on my own. Because to me, I was working, I was gone most of the time.
Right.
And Audra, the huge burden really rested on her shoulders.
Yes.
She knew the day to day. She
Yeah.
knew if they were pulling their weight or they weren't,
Yeah.
So when I was there and they asked me, I just very simply said, what did mom say? And pretty soon they stopped asking me. So
There's a
it,
little tip for some of you parents,
it,
right?
it worked really well. And truthfully, it kept me out of trouble. So it worked great, right?
I want to go back to one question though. When we were talking about sports, you made me think about something, and I don't know how it is in other states, but I know in the tri-state area, when kids play sports, a lot of the coaches and the parents took it very seriously. They thought their kids were all going to be NBA players and they were going to
Yes.
be in the NFL. And, a lot of times if the kids weren't good enough, the coaches would put them on the sideline and wouldn't let them play as much. Or the parents, would be yelling at the kids for missing a ball or not making a goal or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think it really dampened a lot of kids' self-esteem, and a lot of kids, didn't want to play after a while. And
Yep.
and when you have kids involved in activities, and what's a good way, would you say, to handle a situation like that? Like,
Sure.
how should coaches that are working with children react? Not everyone, it's a very small fragment that make
Yeah.
it to the NFL and the NBA. That's like a less than a
You-
0.03%. So these kids are
Right.
just doing it for fun. They're doing it to bond, make friends, learn how to be, a new activity, and to excel.
Yes.
So, what is your expectations of how these parents and these coaches, people who are working with these children, talk to these children? How do they react to these children? Because I saw a lot of things that I didn't like, because I felt like
Right.
they were being much too hard on these children, and
Right.
they weren't giving them the encouragement. Sometimes they did really well and sometimes they didn't, but still,
Yeah.
I didn't, to me, it was just a game. Let these kids have fun, and
Ex-
to me, that's how I thought about it.
Mhm.
We agree. I've had those discussions with coaches and parents. And so here is the philosophy that we adopted. And we believe that any of the kids that are, let's say, sixth grade and under, they should all enjoy it. They should all be given an equal time amount to play.
Mhm.
You don't know where the next great athlete's going to come from. They might decide, I love basketball and I'm going to play it forever, or they may try it and hate it and move on to baseball or track. I think that all these coaches need to change how they react with all the kids that are sixth grade and under, right?
Yes.
Let all of them play, let all of them have equal time,
Yes.
encourage that effort, talk them up, and showcase them when they
Yes.
do something well. Because just like you pointed out, that one fraction of 1% of 0.001 that's actually going to make it to a college or an NBA or an NFL team are so low, right? And if you don't make it fun, they're not going to want to excel in it anyhow, you
Right.
know?
Yeah, I think we need to remember too, in most that age group that you mentioned, most are volunteer coaches, right?
They
Yes.
are.
Mhm.
So you get the dad who's got a son or a daughter, or mom who's got a son or daughter, and then they're like, okay, I'll do it, right? So they may not be experts at coaching, and then you have someone in the stands who is a little overzealous. Uh, and so then that can get confrontational, and just the parent coach personality, that relationship can be tough, let alone you pulling the kids into this. And if the child's dad mom who's overzealous is in the stands, and that kid's not a high performer, and then the coach is like, I'm just here to have a good time. I mean, you can see how it can just get messy. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, it's not to say to stop participating, because that's so amazing, but I think we all have to go step in with a little clarity of what's really happening here,
So
right?
now I really wanted parents or coaches, once you hit about ninth grade,
Mhm.
that's kind of when I believe, and I could be 100% wrong, but that's kind of when the weeding out starts to happen in the physical sports, right?
Right.
Because that is when we're starting to really test aptitude. We're really
Mhm.
starting to see who can
Skills and
win,
abilities, yeah.
right, and play. And so but until ninth grade, I think everyone should play, and I
Yeah.
think everyone gets equal time. And I think everybody should be telling those children, hey, great job trying that, good effort, and
Yeah.
those kind of things. And so I think ninth grade is when you start to separate who is really, because when you hit the junior year, when you hit the senior year, that is when things are separating, and
Yes.
especially in college or other levels. So
Mhm.
to answer your question, that's where I separated, and we did,
Well,
was in ninth grade.
and I think it brings up a point too that I just recalled, like when we were kids, and now obviously we're older, you know, our parents dropped you off at practice and you went for it. Now
Yeah.
parents are sitting at
Yeah.
practices.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
we have a brother-in-law, and he would coach football, and he said when I went, you know, he's like, I walked across the field, I did my practice, I came home, and parents were nowhere to be found. They were
Right.
worried, you know, and
Yeah.
he said, so he took on the role as he got older to be like a coach, you know,
Yeah.
and he said, you know, I would go to the field, and he's like, and first thing, all these parents are sitting there watching me coach a practice, not even a game,
Yeah.
you know, and so then they can be a little over involved, but it is what it is nowadays. And, you know, because parents are scared that something's going to happen to their kids because we hear all these different things, you know, so a lot of it has changed. But yeah, I just think that was interesting that, you know, how now the parents are there for everything. And
Yeah.
that wasn't a thing. You had to fight your way through that, you know,
Right.
as a kid.
And as a kid, yeah, you know, you have to earn your spot, so to speak, you know, and
Right.
if you don't put in the effort. And who was the real famous basketball player that everyone talks about that got cut?
Michael Jordan.
Was it Michael Jordan?
I think it was Michael Jordan. I think. Don't quote me on it.
And I'm with you. I don't quite have the right name, and that's why I was afraid to say. But
No, I'm pretty confident in that one,
but
yeah.
you know, whoever that individual was, they made a commitment in their mind. They got cut from the team.
Yeah.
They said, I'm going to do everything I can to play this next season. And from what I understand, they practiced and practiced and practiced to make that happen.
Right.
And so that was that resilience. That
Yeah.
was grit. They made that mental decision on their part. And
Well,
they made it happen.
I'm sure when he went home, his parents would say, "Oh, buddy, I'm sorry." The parents probably said, "Well, you know what you got to do." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he's like, "You're right." And I'm like, he's not going to get sympathy there, right? Back then, he was like, "Well,
Right.
you might have got to. I'm sorry to hear that, but how you going to fix that, right?"
Yeah.
It was just a different direction was given.
Yeah.
Yeah, because how is he now?
I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
But
But
I
yeah.
thought
Definitely
that
made
was
a
a
name
good
for
story.
himself. Yeah.
Oh, he did for
Mhm.
sure, you know.
He'll come
So
back for sure.
So just, I guess what I would just share with listeners is that I parented for performance without knowing any better.
Yeah.
And when you read the studies, and it shows that they have more motivation when you reward for effort, and their ultimate performance increases because they develop more resilience and grit. And that is a better way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And so
Right.
that's why it was so shocking. And we wanted to share that there is a better way. And, you know,
That's the biggest takeaway I would say is that we
Yes.
want to, because it was a mistake we made.
It is.
And, you know, you try all different things. But I know we did a little of both, but more
We
and
did.
more it was, yeah, just, hey, great work. You
Right.
know, and
If you could take a couple of samples, like emphasize the proper way to actually praise a child, the proper way that would actually help a child develop into a strong, outgoing individual who has resilience and has the determination to want to move
Yeah.
forward and become better. What
Yes.
are some examples or maybe things you like to
Sure.
emphasize to teach other parents? Well, one, I think you should do this. Two, I think you
Yes.
should do this. Maybe you can give a couple of examples so they understand the right way to praise your child.
Sure. So one of the ways that we believe in praising the children is what's called showcasing them. Okay. Meaning, hey, John practiced doing his math homework at the kitchen tables for 2 hours last night. And you tell grandma, you tell grandpa, or you tell a neighbor
even the siblings. Yeah.
or a sibling,
Mhm.
right? And when the other ones hear that, you'll see that child light up. That child will smile from ear to ear
Mhm.
because not only did you recognize the hard work they put forward, but you let somebody else know about it.
Right.
And that person can say to them, way to go, John.
Yeah.
I can't believe you spent 2 hours doing that math homework.
Right.
Wonderful effort, right?
Mhm.
So that's one way, is showcasing the effort that they've done and letting other people know about it, right?
Right.
And then a second way is role playing, okay, with your children, as Audra had pointed out. So you can say, yes, John got an A on his math test, Sally,
Hmm.
but ask him, what did he have to do to get that?
Right.
Let John speak up and say, well, Sally, I had to work 3 hours a night or 2 hours a night, and it took me 5 days, and I da da da. And then Sally's eyes also get real big, and she's like, I didn't know you had to do all that, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
And so you're rewarding the effort that they put forth because you let them tell a sibling, this
Right.
is what I had to do, right? And
Hmm.
so I know those are two big ways
Yeah.
that really help you convey that rewarding of the effort with the children.
Yeah, and two thoughts I would share is one, like we had said, recognize the effort. So you might do that by saying, wow, I saw you getting really frustrated there, but you
Yeah.
stuck with it, and that shows us that you've got the grit. So keep on going.
Hmm.
Just really identifying like, oh, I saw you trip 3 times, but you didn't give up, you got back up, right? So really mirroring what you see, I think is a great piece to help parents know how to maybe dig deeper into how to praise a little bit. And then also to remember that it's fundamental to who the kids are, and let them fail. I mean, it's okay. You got to think as a
Right.
parent, what's the worst that can happen? I don't know how many times we had a trampoline, and I don't know how many times, and of course we had 3 boys, so I was probably a little more like, oh, they'll be all right. But how many times it might have fallen off the trampoline, and
Yeah.
I mean, I could see what was happening and I saw they were okay, but I didn't rush over and said, "Oh my gosh, are you okay? Oh my God." We all know
Yeah.
when you do that with a baby, like, "Oh my gosh, are you okay?" And now it's
Yeah.
more
Mhm.
dramatic. So let them, if the worst that can happen is they scrape a knee. If
Right.
they're right out in traffic, obviously that's where you have to, helicopter and you need to stop.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
let's let our kids trip. Let's let our kids make mistakes. Let's let our kids work their way out of a situation where the kids maybe aren't being so nice to them, as long as it's not dangerous,
Exactly.
because they can't, they have to know they can stand on their own 2 feet when you're not there.
Right.
And if we're constantly rescuing them, and if we're constantly there to catch them before they fall, then they're not learning. So those were the two pieces that I would add in. But yeah, really
Sure.
mirror what you're seeing happening. And it's a little tricky to figure out how to do it first. But I think if you practice at it, and we're always available to help with any information, and we actually do have a guide we're putting together right now that we want to offer up on how to give good praise. So
Oh,
that might be a
good.
good resource too. But yeah, I think just parts and piece in what we've shared might be helpful for them.
Sure. And that's a great way to show how you really believe in your children.
Yes.
Your children want to know that you believe in them.
Yes.
And that's so important. And the second component is that you love them. You know,
Yeah.
they, my parents were not good at sharing that message,
Mhm.
truthfully. But I think when you equip your child with that you believe in them and that
Yeah.
you do love them, even though they might fall, right? It's
Right.
okay. And we're still going to care anyhow.
Yeah,
That's all. That's
every parent listening, I know, no matter if your child's super success or they struggle, it doesn't mean we don't love them, right?
Right.
And they have to know that we love them no matter what life comes and handle and how that works. But
yeah,
I think yeah, that's a key piece.
I think that's great because you also mentioned some of the things that you shouldn't do, but maybe you can emphasize one or two things that you shouldn't do. Because you mentioned a bunch of stuff, and I like the fact that you did mention some things that you shouldn't do, which is, always rush to their rescue, let them fall, let them learn, and
sure.
that's very important. If you had to add one or two more things on the wrong way to kind of pray, the wrong way to do it or go about it, or
Mhm.
certain behaviors you shouldn't emphasize, you might be habit, it might be because you grew up in a certain environment. But what are one or two ways that you can think of off the top of your head that you shouldn't do when you're raising your child that can have a negative effect on their personality, behavior, or, kind of harm them in their future growing up? Because little things could actually traumatize people, and they might even not know that they're being traumatized. It
Yeah.
might just, subconsciously it stays in the back of your head and it changes your behavior and people
Mhm.
don't even realize it. But what are a couple of things that you would say, don't do this? From my opinion, I don't think you should do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, Matt's
Yes.
got
So,
something.
so
Go ahead.
one is compare,
Hmm.
right? We
Yes.
don't, if you have two, three, four children, even if you are an only child, uh, there's a negative if you compare your child to another child in your household
Yes.
or another child in someone else's household.
Right.
That can be very detrimental, because that person feels they're being judged, and
Yes.
it's easy for them to feel they're being judged unfairly.
Yes.
And so that can create a real negative consequence. We want to be more person-centered. We want to
Right.
lift them up, support that individual, then compare. So one of the
Yeah.
negatives is comparing.
You triggered something for me to think of. I wasn't going to say this, but I would like to say it now, is that we had an experience where there was a family who I've heard it said, you do not want to walk in front of them, um, just because, and not have your act together, because this family was known to be critical and judgmental of other people. And
Okay.
so within the confines of your own home, if someone screws up on, even on TV, or you heard somebody screwed up within your own home, to help your children feel more secure,
Yeah.
and just be a good person, is don't talk about other people's failures in a
Yes.
negative way. Like, don't showcase that, like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
what a goofball,
Mhm.
because now your child is hearing this and making internally, they're making decisions on how they're, oh my gosh, I don't ever want to do that because dad does not think that's cool,
Yeah.
and so then it creates a lot of unnecessary anxiety and stress. But yeah, we want to make sure that we keep ourselves in check with how we judge, quote unquote, other people.
I
So I
like
think
that.
that's an important piece
That
too.
is, that's huge, right?
That's great. Now, where can people find your website? And also, when is that guide going to be expected to come out?
I would say in 2 weeks. So for sure by end of February.
Okay, that's great. I'm excited.
Sure.
I can't wait to see
Yeah.
it. Now, where
Yeah.
can people find you guys on the website?
Sure. We are the easiest name is www.blackbeltbruce.com.
Okay,
And so it's a site that's designed to help parents have available character and leadership resources
Yeah.
that they can use in their own home to
great.
strengthen not only their message of courtesy, their message of focus, their message of discipline and respect, uh, but it's characters that reinforce that good message.
Yeah, they're animated characters. Super fun. It's
Yeah,
a fun program. We love it.
they have a
So,
great time.
yeah.
So that's one way they can reach out to us. And
Mhm.
if they had any questions for us, our martial arts students named our character as Black Belt Bruce. Okay. And so so if you emailed us at bruce@blackbeltbruce.com, we'd be happy to answer any questions that somebody might have or
Oh,
share more
excellent.
information about our program. So that'd be a good way they could locate us.
And are you on the social networks anywhere?
We are a little bit. We're not as good at it as we should be, but yeah, Facebook, Insta,
Okay.
yeah, you can LinkedIn. I have my information on there, and we promote that because we really work with a lot of high performing parents to help their kids, be successful. So
Oh,
that's
excellent.
yeah, it's a good place to find us. Thank you.
Oh,
Sure.
you're
Thank you.
welcome. This has been amazing. I thank you guys for your time, and I can't wait to hear you guys and the next topic you're going to talk about. Remember that they have their own podcast under the complete I'm sorry, the advisor with Stacy Chillemi, and they have their own podcast with their own URL. You'll find it, and you can find it on any podcast network. You'll see that their podcast there, and you could just type in their name and it'll pop right up.
There you go.
And I'm very, very excited because you become a part of our podcast community and you have such great information and great resources. And I'm so glad that you guys have become a part of our team because you really help parents really see things from a different perspective. And in today's society, we hear such cross information, and
Mm.
I think people get confused on the right and wrong way to do things. And it's nice to hear different points of opinions and different suggestions that they can incorporate in their lives. And maybe if they're having struggling with certain issues, they have great constructive ideas that they can incorporate in their own lives, in their own family, that could actually improve their life and improve their family life and actually make their children, better leaders and better people, for the future to come. So
There
thank
you
you so
go.
much.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
again. We really enjoy everything you do, and thank
Yeah.
you for allowing us to participate. We really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. You guys have a great day.
You too.
Thank you.
Thank you.